The moment she leaned close and whispered, "Take me home, or you're fired," his entire world seemed to tilt off balance. It wasn't just the threat, it was the tremble in her voice, the kind that didn't belong to a powerful CEO who commanded boardrooms with a single glance. It was fear. Raw, unfiltered fear. And in that one fragile second, everything he thought he knew about her shattered. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us of the humanity behind every face, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. You never know whose life a simple act of support might touch. He had always seen her as untouchable. Cold. Calculated. The kind of woman who built an empire brick by brick and never looked back at the people she stepped over. As a struggling single father barely holding his life together, he existed in a completely different universe. His mornings were chaos, packing lunchboxes, waking his daughter gently so she wouldn't feel the absence of her mother too sharply, rushing through traffic, praying he wouldn't be late again. His nights were exhaustion, helping with homework, cooking simple meals, and quietly worrying about bills stacking faster than his paychecks could keep up. His job at the company wasn't glamorous. He wasn't a manager, not even close. He worked quietly, efficiently, hoping to stay invisible enough not to lose the one thing keeping his small family afloat. Getting fired wasn't just a career setback, it was the difference between stability and collapse. So when the CEO singled him out, not in a meeting, not in public, but in that quiet hallway where her composure cracked for just a second, he didn't know what to think. Her words sounded like an ultimatum, but her eyes told a completely different story. They were pleading, almost desperate, like someone drowning but too proud to scream for help. He hesitated for only a heartbeat. Fear told him to walk away, to pretend he hadn't heard anything. Survival told him to obey. But something deeper, something human, made him nod. The drive was silent at first. The city lights blurred past the windows, casting fleeting shadows across her face. She leaned back, her usual rigid posture gone, replaced with a kind of exhaustion that seemed to seep into the air itself. He kept both hands tight on the steering wheel, his mind racing. This wasn't normal. Nothing about this was normal. Then he noticed the way her hands trembled slightly in her lap. Not dramatically, not enough for most people to notice, but he did. Years of raising a child alone had sharpened his awareness. He knew what quiet distress looked like. The address she gave led to a luxurious apartment building, the kind he had only ever seen from the outside. But when they arrived, she didn't get out immediately. She just sat there, staring ahead, as if crossing that final distance required more strength than she had left. He finally spoke, cautiously, not as an employee, but as someone who couldn't ignore what he was seeing. He asked if she was okay, the simplest question in the world, but it hung between them like something heavy and fragile. For a moment, she said nothing. And then, slowly, the walls began to crumble. Her voice was quiet, almost unfamiliar. She spoke of pressure, the kind that builds silently until it becomes unbearable. Of expectations from investors, betrayal from people she trusted, and a loneliness so deep that even success couldn't fill it. She confessed she hadn't slept properly in days. That tonight, something inside her had finally snapped. And for the first time in years, she didn't trust herself to be alone. He listened. Not because he had answers, but because he understood what it meant to carry too much and have no one to share it with. When they finally stepped into her apartment, the contrast between her powerful public image and her private reality was stark. The space was immaculate, expensive, almost perfect, but it felt empty. Cold. Like a place no one truly lived in. She sank onto the couch, her strength fading the moment the door closed behind them. And in that quiet, vulnerable space, the roles between them shifted. He wasn't just an employee anymore. And she wasn't just a CEO. He stayed longer than he intended. At first, just to make sure she was okay. Then because leaving didn't feel right. He made her a simple cup of tea, something he did every night for his daughter when she couldn't sleep. It wasn't much, but it was something real. She thanked him in a way that felt different from the polished gratitude she showed in meetings. This was softer. Genuine. That night changed something. The next day at work, everything looked the same. She was composed again, distant, the CEO everyone recognized. But there were subtle differences. A glance that lingered a second longer. A tone that wasn't as sharp. For him, life didn't magically become easier. Bills were still there. His daughter still needed him. But something inside him felt lighter, as if helping someone else had reminded him that he wasn't as powerless as he sometimes felt. Days turned into weeks, and an unspoken connection began to form. Not dramatic, not obvious, but real. She started trusting him with small tasks outside his usual role. Then with bigger ones. Not because he was the most qualified, but because he was steady. Reliable. Human. He learned more about her struggles, not through grand confessions, but through quiet moments. And she, in turn, learned about his life, the sacrifices, the quiet strength it took to raise a child alone, the way he never complained despite carrying so much. For the first time in years, she began to see the world beyond numbers and strategies. And he began to see that even the strongest people could break. But change never comes without challenges. Rumors started spreading in the office. Questions about why he was being given more responsibility. Whispers that weren't kind. The kind that could destroy reputations and careers. He felt the pressure building again, this time from a different direction. Helping her had come from a place of compassion, but now it was starting to affect everything else. And then came the moment that tested everything. A critical meeting. Investors. High stakes. One mistake could cost the company millions. She faltered. Not visibly, not in a way most people would notice. But he saw it, the same crack he had seen that night. The same fear creeping back in. And without thinking, he stepped in. Not overstepping, not taking control, but supporting in the only way he knew how, quietly, steadily, like he did every day in his own life. The meeting ended successfully. The crisis passed. But what stayed wasn't the victory, it was the realization. She didn't need to carry everything alone. And he didn't need to see himself as just anything. They had both been surviving in their own worlds, believing their struggles were theirs alone to bear. But somehow, in the most unexpected way, they had found strength in each other. As time went on, the lines between their roles became clearer, not blurred inappropriately, but redefined with respect and understanding. She remained his CEO. He remained her employee. But beneath that, there was something deeper, a connection built on shared humanity. And slowly, life began to change. Not overnight. Not perfectly. But meaningfully. He found new opportunities opening up at work, not as favors, but as recognition of his ability. She found herself breathing a little easier, knowing she didn't have to face everything alone. And at home, his daughter noticed something too. A softness in him. A hope that hadn't been there before. Before we reach the end, if this story has touched your heart even a little, please comment below with the word hope. It helps this story reach others who might need it. The truth is, that night could have gone very differently. He could have walked away. She could have stayed silent. And two lives would have continued on separate paths, carrying their burdens alone. But sometimes, it only takes one moment. One choice. One act of kindness. And everything changes. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that even in the darkest moments there is still light, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these stories alive, and you never know who might need to hear this today. Because in the end, it wasn't about power or position. It was about two broken people finding strength, not in themselves alone, but in each other.